Good morning, everyone. It's Ben Buckner and Dan Bosse from the United Kingdom. Today, it is Monday, September the 8th. We have got the beginning of a USDA report week. I think markets mixed, still struggling on rallies. And I think if we work backward from the WASD, I think what dominates to us, or to me at least, is, corn harvest now as far north as, Southern Illinois, Kentucky. That will only continue to expand over the next 2 to 4 weeks. China importing record amounts of soybeans from everywhere but the United States, I think, to maybe bridge the gap into next year's South American harvest. And of course, we've got the WASD. We've got to contend too with, I think, a dry finish to the U.S. growing season, but also an earlier than normal start to the rainy season in Mato Grosso. So are those offsetting? But Dan, there's a lot going on. If you want to jump into it and tell us what you are seeing this morning, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's Ben. I think the market's really struggling here between trying to understand the losses that the dry finish would give us in terms of corn and soybean yield, and then what's ahead on other fundamentals. And so I think that's all very, very key here. And undoubtedly, we have lost some bushels. I think if you were to ask both of us, even though we seem to be somewhat bearish, I would say we've lost anywhere from 2 to 4 bushels on corn, maybe 1 to 2 bushels on beans. The market reflected that in the rally from post the USDA crop report in August up until where we were on Friday. And then we've seen the markets come down. The soybean market made a high earlier than corn. The corn market moved up against that 425, 430 resistance on Friday and then pulled back. Here this morning, we're coming into the new week. We've got China planning for what I call a full avoidance of U.S. soybean imports. And I only say that because as you look at China, this is a report that came out late Sunday. They've imported a record amount of soybeans, 12.3 million metric tons for the month of August. And, trying to put that into perspective for all of us, when we think about what this really means, it's not so much the news article there, but I want your eyes to focus on that red star that's in this graphic right here. This is monthly global soybean imports into China. Now, we at Ag Resource, based on vessel counts, we're expecting some seasonality. We were looking for imports around 10.4, 10.5 million metric tons. So we were surprised by 2 million tons to the upside. Undoubtedly, China's preparing with these big imports. If you look backwards in time, we have the 24, 25, and the 10-year averages there. You can see how big this August import estimate really is at 12.5 million tons. It's a big, big number. And it really shows us that China's stocking the cupboards from probably what's to come. So by that, I'm saying China's preparing for diminishment of U.S. soybean imports, principally in the period from late November through January. And if you look at port supplies here this morning, they're record large, at least for the first part of September. So we are Ag Resource now believe USDA is prepared to raise their Chinese import estimate. This would be for the 24-25 crop year, probably up to 109 or somewhere in that vicinity. So that's an increase. And China's, again, filling the cupboards in preparation for what I believe will be lackluster or non-existent imports from the United States. We can also look down south in Brazil, and we can see through the end of August, Brazil's been really ramping up its soybeans. These are vessel counts of Brazilian ships waiting to load Brazilian corn. And again, much above last year. So we believe in the total, because of a larger Brazilian corn crop and a better export program, that compared to last year, Brazil will export 6.5 or 7 million metric tons more of corn. That will put us closer to 45 or 46 million metric tons, further reducing U.S. competitiveness. Last week, I think we highlighted that in the world of corn, Ukraine and Brazil both became substantially more aggressive against the United States. Argentina was aggressive before, so United States is no longer the low-cost seller of corn in the world. This will start to slow U.S. export sales as we go forward. So be mindful of this slowing of U.S. corn export demand as we head into the U.S. harvest. Also this morning, we've got updates from GLAM. GLAM is that NVDI number that NAS and WASD closely follow as they look at their crop reports. You can see here GLAM estimates are seasonally coming down and may have come down a little more than expected due to the dryness, but they're still record large. So if you were to ask us today where the U.S. corn yield is, it's probably not somewhere in the vicinity of 189 or 190. We're probably a little less than that, but nonetheless, it is a large U.S. corn yield That's going to, of course, give us plenty of supply as we look forward. GLAM is not indicating that the dryness has shaved off the any total that's more than, let's say, 2 to 4 bushels an acre from whatever you want to start during the month of August. So again, a very large corn harvest is ahead, and I think that's important to recognize as we look at the corn market. As you do your skews for the September report and look at stocks to use ratio, the market above 420, we did this plot late last week, is overvalued. So I hate to say to the U.S. farmer that December corn at 425 or 430 would be a sale. We believe that to be the case. Longer term, we are still not of the opinion that seasonal lows have been scored. We think lower lows can be scored, much like the wheat market did when, of course, a lot of people thought it reached its harvest bottoms in the late June, July timeframe. Here we find ourselves today at even lower levels. So again, this is a skew here that gives us some concern as we look forward. As you look at global wheat supplies of the major exporters, you can see here that we are sitting at a record high, up 15 million metric tons from last year. As we look at it at Ag Resource, that number could still go up a couple million metric tons because of a larger Russian crop. Many private sources are indicating that the Russian wheat crop could be somewhere between 87.5 and 88.5 million metric tons due to the record supplies that are coming from spring wheat, or record yields from spring wheat, principally in the Siberian area, but also through the northern Black Sea growing area. So when you think about the world wheat market, it's oversupplied. When we're coming and we're looking at southern competition, it is going to be a record there also. And this is the function of wheat prices, is somehow to get rid of this stuff. And that's why you're finding the wheat market on its back as we look forward. Lastly, as you go forward to all of this, we can kind of indicate where the countries that have been delaying wheat exports or been behind. You can see in the first 2 months of the Black Sea here, July and August, we're down somewhere close to 3 million metric tons. When you look at what's ahead, we need September exports to be record large. And then, of course, we need that export pace to stay sizable as we look toward next year, June. So again, the Black Sea's chore here on price is not only to export a lot of wheat in the month of September, October, but it's to keep that export pace going forward. And it's got a lot of competition for that to happen. When you look at the EU, the same situation, those two red dots down there are July and August exports going forward. You can see, at least on this graphic, that the overall trend here is down. Sorry about my phone there going off here. But as you look forward, it's a situation where the EU also needs to be aggressive. And this is why the price of EU wheat is below the price of EU corn. Livestock feeders in the EU are going to find wheat as a very attractive alternative of feeding corn. And this may impact U.S. corn exports as we think about the next 3 to 6 months to come. Finally, Ben, we'll finish up here with what I consider to be highlights of why we're still bearish. People ask us, well, why at Ag Resource are you bearish? Don't you think the markets are going to have strong rallies like last year heading into February? We do not see that, and we do not expect that. We're concerned about a record large U.S. corn crop, let's call it exceeding 16.4 billion bushels. That would be down a bushel or two from USDA's yield estimate because of the dry finish. Total U.S. corn supplies, 17.5 or 18 million metric tons. When we look at China, it is avoidance, full avoidance, or maybe total avoidance of U.S. soybean exports so far. We think China has bought beans from Brazil through November. That impact is 720 and 770 million bushels. We at Ag Resource have dropped our export estimate to 1440. That's down 265 million bushels from USDA. We really can't make up this differential until we get to the new crop next year. So the impact on yield crop balance sheet is large. It is much more important than any drop of 1 or 2 bushels an acre in terms of yield. Lastly, we've got this export fight. We'll call it a fist fight going on between major exporters of wheat. The world wheat exporter supplies are record large at 480 to 483. And boy, I've got the Southern Hemisphere coming on with a record large 52 or 55 million metric ton crop. So the fist fight for world demand is on in wheat. So putting it all together, I still believe to be bearish of corn, wheat, and soybeans. Maybe the most risk is the soybean market because the Chinese avoidance of U.S. soybeans can't be made up. And to me, that's the big thorn in my backside as we think about pricing going forward for the U.S. farmer. Back to you, Ben.
Yeah, great summary, and I think that's right. And we'll see what the USDA says on Friday. You know, there's always excitement surrounding these fall USDA crop reports and WASDs, but we do want people to be prepared to make moves. I think on recoveries, that's still the message, and kind of taking a step back and thinking, you know, big picture, high level. I think to be bullish of grains, you need a disruption of some kind. Either that is China buying tons of soybeans, tons of corn globally, or wheat, or weather issues, and that doesn't happen, I think, until the southern hemisphere growing season kicks off in earnest, and that's not until November, December. Things look good so far. Argentine drought ending, Australian wheat crop estimates rising. So just be mindful that that is the case. We'll keep an eye out for new supply disruptions, but we don't see anything today. Happy Monday, as all the best, as usual, all the best in the markets today, and we'll be back tomorrow with everything you need to know. Thanks for watching.